তাহলে বোঝাতে একটুখানি মুশকিল হবে, বাট আমি জিস্টটা বলে দিচ্ছি। যদিও এটা একটা বলা যেতে পারে পোস্ট মডার্ন প্লে, এটার জিস্ট মানে মেন স্টোরি সেরকম কিছু নেই। সিম্পলি ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে যে উই ক্যান সি দ্যাট a person called, a character called Hank or Smith, Will, his name is like Will Smith or Bob Smith, something like that, but he is known to his friends as Yank. Okay, and he works as a shoveler in a cruise liner, in an ocean liner, in a ship, and he works at the base, literally and figuratively at the base of the society and the base of the ship. So Yank represents the downtrodden, the have-nots, the people who are working class, proletariat. You can use any term to signify the position or situation of Yank. So Yank is working as he is scheduled to do in his shift and in his ship, wherever he is putting the coal into the fire to run the steam engine. And he thinks that he is the best worker because he is physically very fit, he is physically very strong, and using his physical strength he could shovel a lot of coal into the fire. His life is simple, and which signifies, which reflects that um, uh, life of a working class person, life of a worker is usually very simple because he or she works from dawn to dusk, and then that person goes to sleep because his body is tired, and so on and so forth. So there is a idealization usually in our minds about the life of a worker or the life of a daily wage laborer or something like that. So but here the focus will soon shift from the idealization or glorification of the life of a working class person to something very disturbing. So Hank is working in his ship, in the base of the ship, shoveling coal into the fire, and he has no contact with the upper decks. But for some reason, somebody from the upper deck, a very rich lady called Mildred, she comes into contact with Yank. I mean, either Yank was going out of the ship, or the ship was anchored and he was supposed to go out and take his supplies and stuff like that, and Mildred was also coming out of the main deck, or coming out of the area where rich people would be staying. And they suddenly comes face to face, and they suddenly meet at a particular place in the ship, and Mildred is horrified of the manly beastly Yank, because Yank is covered in coal, because he is a burly person, he is a very strong and very physically imposing person. So Mildred is um, scared of this person, and she calls Yank a filthy beast, because she has never seen any person like this, because this is a satire on the rich people, satire on the bourgeois people, who don't even know how the poor people in the society live, and what kind of work they do, and how their life involves a lot of dust and lots of grime. So he was grimy, he was burly, he was big, and thus um, Mildred, according to Mildred, who is the representative of the rich class, representative of the proletariat, the apathetic society, the apathetic higher class of society, um, she doesn't make fun of Yank, but she thinks that Yank is a beast, and she even calls him that. Yank also retorts. Yank is also angry at this person, and till this point in time, Yank was very secure that his work is very simple, his work is very sure for him, and he is the best worker in whatever he is doing. It's a small work, but it's a non-significant work, but he gave a lot of significance to his own work, as we all do. And he thought that he was secure in his position. But when Mildred called him a filthy beast, his belief in himself, his belief in his simple and honest work was shaken. And then the existential crisis, or then the identity crisis of Yank starts to come out. It starts to burst at the seams. And then he goes out in order to search for an identity that will not make somebody call him a filthy beast anymore. And now the entire play is surrounding his departure from the ship in search of something called an identity, in search of something called a humane identity, in search of something that he could find, which is like his own. He wanted to have a group. He wanted to have some people whom he called his own, because even when he was working in the ship, the other workers were not as muscular, as powerful as Yank was, and Yank sort of bullied them sometimes, and Yank made fun of them that, your bodies are very weak, and I am the strongest of you, and I do the work best, and so on and so forth. But when he came when he came face to face with the more sophisticated, the more genteel, so-called genteel part of the society, you can say that Yank came face to face with a mirror. And in a mirror, he saw that his body is disfigured, his body is like that of an ape, and hence the name hairy ape. And incidentally, Yank is also shown to be very hairy. The actor who first played the role was very hairy, or maybe hair was put as a kind of a makeup. So he goes out and he tries to complain against the rich people, against the workers union, but the workers union did not take him to be his own. The workers union reprimanded him, or the workers union neglected, avoided him, because he was just a worker, and he was not some political leader, or he was not somebody who had a huge following so that he would bring something to the worker union, which is again a satire against the entire system of so-called workers, who is supposed, the union is supposed to help the worker, but the union leaders and the union of the workers have their own agenda, and they do not give any space to people who have come with a complaint against the higher ups, because these people, these union leaders, already have a kind of a atad with the rich people, so that the rich people could still exploit the poor workers through the union leaders. So this was exposed in the play, and we need to remember that this is an American play. So of course the satire against the working class makes sense, okay? But Yank, as a representative of the working class, as the most marginalized of all the people, is also a point here. Anyway, so he goes to a shop, and he again saw his own reflection, and he realized that he really looks ugly in his own eyes. And when he was trying to enter the shop, some people did not allow him to. Then there was a brawl with them, and he was put into prison. He came out of the prison, and then he went to a zoo. I mean, he had nothing else to do, so he went to a zoo, and thought that, there was a gorilla in a cage, and he thought that at last this gorilla could be his friend, or his brother, and he in fact calls the gorilla his brother, and enters into the cage of the gorilla. But the gorilla also rejects him by throwing him away, by by breaking his neck and killing him and throwing him away, and he dies. So through Yank, O'Neill tries to show that in the modern society, in our postmodern society, we do not really have any sense of belongingness. So that is roughly what the play is about. And I said that it doesn't really have a particular story. I mean, there is no end, there is no, I mean, end is there, like with the death of Yank, but there is no meaningful end. There is no meaning in the death of Yank, and there is no meaning in the death of so many other people who die regularly, and poor people who die regularly. Now, coming to the question about the disharmony between man's primitive pride and his individualism. So, primitive pride is, I mean, if we are considering this from the angle of anthropology, then we might understand that apes, all sorts of apes, always live together in bunches, in groups. Gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys, macaques, and all of the apes, including human beings. Human beings are also apes, and human beings are supposed to live together. They do, but they have so many other groups now, like Hindu, Muslim, upper caste, lower caste, high class, low class, worker, non-worker, blue collar, white collar, and there is so many differences between the people who, the human beings who are supposed to live together. So the primitive pride of Yank came into conflict with his individualism, in the sense that when he was working, he was using his brute force, he was using his muscle to do his job. Now, in the primitive case, in the primitive situation, it was simply the muscle of a person that made him have his food. If you are muscular, if you are tough, you will get your food, or if you are not tough, if you are not muscular enough, then you might not be able to earn your food. That was the idea about primitivity. I mean, that's why it is called primitive, because there was not much of an intellectual um intellectual rigor to the living of the primitive people. And similarly, Yank too did not have much intellectual labor to do, and he, as we know from the text, as if we read the text, then we would know that Yank had difficulty with thoughts. He could not bring out his thoughts in a coherent manner, because there was no need for him to do that. So that was his primitiveness, but his pride was in the fact that he lives by the sweat of his brow. He was not a cheater, he was not a criminal, he did not do anything, he was not earning his money by any unfair means, but he was earning his money through his muscles, and that was a kind of a pride for him. But and when you are a worker, when you are not using your intellectual faculties that much, you will not be you would not want to divide yourselves into various categories, and your individualism will not flower. The less intellectual you are, the less individualistic you are, the less selfish you are. The more mind, the more brain, the more intellectual caliber you start to acquire, you become more aware of yourself. Now, Yank was not aware of his existence. He was not aware that people might despise him. He was not aware of the fact that he looked filthy, like a filthy beast, because there were no mirrors in the um, in the machine room where he was shoveling the coal. So he took pride in these facts, okay, and it was his pride that was pitched against the society and an idea of the society, that is individualism, that led to his tragic death. So if he did not have had this pride, hubris, then he might not have had entangled himself with the cops, or he might not have had fought with the employers in the ship, or he might not have had gotten into the cage of the gorilla to acquire a sense of belongingness. So what happened is that his pride was challenged when he stepped out of his little world of co-workers. When we step out of our comfort zone, when we step out of the zone where we have been working for a long time and enter into another world, enter into another space, our identity is challenged, our confidence is challenged, and this is something that is a modern malady, that is a modern existential problem for all of us. Okay, so here too, Yank also faced the same issue. Now, he wanted to assert his individualism. As Mildred called him a filthy beast, he wanted to show that he was not a filthy beast. Though being a filthy beast in the engine room of the ship kept him alive. But now he wants to say, he wants to acquire a sense of individualism which will not protect him anymore from a society that is apathetic to people like these. It's the fate of a rural person who comes into the city. I mean, in various Bollywood movies, we have often seen that the villager is made fun of. In the same way, Hank rejects or comes out of his comfort zone, of his group, of his co-workers, of the people with whom he could readily and easily identify with, or not get identified at all. I think I talked about this idea of um, what was that, from Foucault, uh, which was about identification. What was the term? One was archiving, and another one was I can't remember the term. But another term for this kind of situation is interpellation. In interpellation, people are
Sure,
given
enunciation.
enunciation. Yes, right. Thank you. Enunciation or interpellation is something that marks you, that gives you a kind of a name, or that gives you a kind of an identity. And in the case of people like us, workers, common people, very common people, we are not identified, we are not and hence we cannot be targeted. Something that cannot be identified, something that is not seen, something that is invisible in the society, might not be targeted. We might be safe from the gaze of the the people who want to earn some money, or make some kind of a political statement using something that the common people say. In the contrastively, a person who is intellectually brilliant, or who has a name in the society, they will be easily targeted by the police, by the state or the state police, whatever is the situation of a particular place. But we don't usually target somebody who shows no, or very less level of intellectual caliber. So people are afraid of intelligent people, and hence non-intelligent people will not be a target. So he was safe in that primitive place, but that pride, that he took pride in that primitivity, led him to desire some kind of individualism after he was confronted with Mildred. So as an individual he wanted to show, as an individual he wanted to gain a name for himself. He wanted to gain an identity that would be free of the literally the coal that covered his skin. And he wanted to have a kind of a um, identity that would be disassociated from being called a filthy beast, because we don't have names for beasts, right? I mean, though naming a lion as Sita has created some kind of a trouble in I think in the Alipur Zoo. But anyway, I mean that's a special beast because it's in the zoo. But in general, we don't have names for beasts. If we see a beast, we just call that beast a beast, and we don't individualize them. So Yank wanted to individualize himself, and then it led to a lot of trouble. He wanted to go to the workers union and be a part of the workers. He was not accepted over there. Then he went to maybe buy a suit, or he wanted to get a little clean, and he entered into a brawl with the people over there, because he was again using his physical faculties to do whatever he was doing. He was not using his intellectual capacities. He was then put in the prison for brawling and for having a fight, and ultimately his last uh, sense of individualism, that is his physical strength, was also humbled and humiliated by a beast that is really a beast, and hence physically more powerful than him. Maybe in another situation he could have had fought off even the gorilla, but the intellectual society has already uh, sucked his physical strength, because he thought that having physical strength, having a brutish body, is something that one should be ashamed of, rather than one should be proud of. And hence his total Yank underwent a total um, disruption of identity, of life, of his social grip on the society. Okay, so that's what you are going to discuss if the question is so that comment on the disharmony between primitive pride and individualism as you find through the character of Yank in the hairy ape. Okay, so now let's move on to the second question in the list. Tragi-comedy. Comment on hairy ape as a tragi-comedy. Now this is, as you can understand, a mixture of uh, two genres, tragedy and comedy. So first you need to talk about what is a tragedy and what is a comedy, the basic features, and you need to put Yank's experiences, Yank's character, and the plot and whatever is happening in Hairy Ape into both these categories, tragedy as well as comedy. So let's give a few examples. Everybody says, the scholars say, the commentators on Hairy Ape say that Yank does not have any tragic flaw, because everything starts from this tragic flaw. Yank did not have, according to many scholars, Yank did not have any tragic flaw, yet he underwent a kind of a peripety, he underwent a kind of a downfall. First of all, a point in tragedy, or a point opposite to tragedy, a kind of a anti-point of our answer would be that usually tragedy is about big people. Tragedy is about warriors and kings and princes. I mean, uh, Greek tragedy, Roman tragedy. But in modern life, in modern world, tragedy itself is not possible, because no one stands so high, either morally or in terms of um, influence, or in terms of importance, that his or her fall is going to create some kind of a tragic response in the audience. However, uh, there are people in our world whose life matters a lot to us. There are film stars, and then there are cricket stars and football stars and pop stars, rap stars, so many other people who, I mean, some politicians. Their life and death, their rise and fall does matter in the society, but not in the same sense as it does in the Greek world. So, see, thinking about this category, Yank is just a simple worker. Hence, his fall will not trigger a tragic response. In that sense, it is not tragic. His death is not tragic, rather, his death is pathetic. However, in a tragedy, we often find a very useful element, a very crucial element of conflict, internal as well as external. Either man is fighting his fate or woman is fighting his fate, or the protagonist or the protagonists are fighting the society, or they are fighting another person, another army, another uh, supernatural elements, so on and so forth. Some conflict is going on, and then there are deeper tragedies where internal conflict is also shown, as in the case of Hamlet, as in the case of King Lear, as in the case of Othello. There's an internal conflict, a moral dilemma. Yank does not have a moral dilemma. Yank's life was simple. Yank's conflict is with the society, and hence it does qualify the kind of conflict that Yank engages himself in, does qualify this play or Yank's character to be understood as a tragic character, or the play to be understood as a tragedy. Does he have hubris? Yes, he does have hubris in the sense of his primitive pride. He took pride in the fact, he was proud that he was physically very fit, that he was he was a burly person, he was a monster of a man. That was his pride, but he little knew that this does not really matter much until you are an entertainer, like a WWE fighter, or you are a film star or something like that. I mean, your physical strength will not really get you a long way in the society. You can't be too rich just by being physically strong, or too popular also. That was a conflict. That was a genuine conflict between his primitive pride and his individualism, as we already talked about it earlier. So you can bring that entire section here when you're talking about a tragic conflict. So yes, there is a tragic conflict, and it ends in the death of the protagonist, and hence it can be called as a tragic event. Okay. Is there a peripety? Is there a reversal of fortune? Yes, there is a reversal of fortune, though we can say that Yank never had a real fortune, like he did not have a lot of money, but he was at least satisfied. He was at least doing what he liked to do, or whatever he knew he could do. There was no conflict, there was no moral dilemma, there was no problem over there. The problem started the moment he started doubting that why couldn't he just come back and fit himself where he always used to fit. No, he had to discover something about himself. He wanted to do something else that he was never trained to do. That was the reversal of his little piece that he had. Okay. When did he discover? Now there's this another idea of anagronesis, which is discovery. So is there any discovery in the fact? No. Yank never discovers that he was wrong, because he dies. He's killed by the gorilla. So there is no discovery. There is no moment in the play where he realizes that he made a mistake by following his desire of individual identity, and he never wanted to get back either, which could have been more tragic. But his end, his death, does not give much scope for the concept of anagronesis or discovery in here. Okay. Um, so from these from this perspective, we can say that there are some tragic elements, some, not many, but some tragic elements in the play. Now, what are the comic elements? First of all, Yank's body seems comical. I mean, not because he's like big and he's burly, but because the way in which Neil presents him. O'Neill is presenting um, Yank as a comically exaggerated worker. Um, his body elicits a response of a comic awe. I don't know if that makes sense. Comic awe in the sense that sometimes when we are on the verge of body shaming some person who is like extra padded and who's obese, or who's not really fit, we our first response is a smirk. আমরা একটু মুচকি হেসে দিই. We smile, and then we try to think that no, this is body shaming and we should not laugh or we should not smirk. But the first response as human beings is that we will smirk at that person who is either really very tall, really very short, really a few extra pounds, or quite a number of pounds, or too thin. I mean, I don't understand the standards of our world. What is the perfect thing? Because the perfect does not exist. It's just an idea in our mind. So the body, the presentation, the way in which Yank is presented is comical. It elicits a kind of an comic awe. I don't know if I am inventing this term called comic awe, and I'll take copyright of this. Don't steal it from me if it is like my own invention. But that is what you might find in the response of the audience of a person like that. Like if we find Khali, the WWE fighter. He's like 8 feet tall and he's huge like a monster, and we might be afraid and we might smile at his appearance all at the same time. So this is what Yank is. Think Yank to be Khali. Okay, or yeah, his name is Khali. So that's one thing that is comical. Secondly, the treatment of Yank. I mean, Yank is presented as a person who has difficulty thinking. Then how much of a human he really is? Because humans are humans because they think. I think, therefore I am. So, but Yank was like, I stink, therefore I am. Because, I mean, even his body odor was really very nauseating, and Mildred almost fainted at looking at Yank, and maybe because of the body odor, which is the hallmark of a person who lives by his muscular strength, who lives by his physical strength. Okay, body odor, bad odor, because he's working, he's sweating, he or she. Um, so that's another thing. Third is the response of Mildred itself. Like, we might make fun of Mildred here, and we might call her what in Bengali we call Naka, a coquette. I mean, why would you faint at the sight of a human being? Like, what kind of a person are you? Have you not ever seen a big human being, like a hairy person who is working? If you have not seen, then what kind of a human are you? Are you from a different planet or what? So this is a sarcastic way in which Mildred's character is presented, and satire is comic here. Though it's dark comedy, it's very dark comedy, but the comic reaction is there. Okay, even when it is in a satiric form, even when we are making fun of Mildred. Um, then when and I feel that ultimately when he is killed by the gorilla, or when he calls the gorilla a brother, that also that also leads to a kind of a comic situation. I mean, why would a man call a gorilla brother? I mean, we make fun of our friends by calling each other Bador or monkey, and gorilla and chimpanzee, but we ourselves do not want to identify with them. But when we do, it's a kind of a self-depreciatory comic situation where you are depreciating you are human, and you are taking your level down to a gorilla, and to be killed by that same gorilla. It's I'm not saying that it is funny, but it's darkly comic. And comedy often ends, or always ends, in a kind of a happy reunion. Here there is no happy reunion. Here the play ends in tragedy, and hence in that sense it is not a comedy. But it also lacks a number of tragic features, and hence the name Tragi-comdey has been given to it, put to it. Okay, so you can conclude by saying this. All right, let us stop here today, unless you have some questions.
স্যার, একটা কোয়েশ্চেন আছে, সেটা হচ্ছে
হ্যাঁ
গিয়ে লুই আলথুজারের যে ইন্টারপেলেশনের কথা আছে, ওটার সঙ্গে কি ফুকোর যেটা বলা আছে এখানে, এনাউন্সিয়েশন, এটার কি কোনো মিল আছে?
হ্যাঁ, দুটোর মধ্যে ডেফিনেটলি মিল আছে। Interpellation আর enunciation. Interpellation is applied more to human categories, and enunciation is applied to all anthropological elements in general. এটা
আর
একটা
এটা
ডিফারেন্স।
দুটোই সাবজেক্টিভিটি,
হ্যাঁ,
আর আর এটা দুটোই সাবজেক্টিভিটিটাকে প্রুফ করছে, তাই তো?
সাবজেক্টিভিটি বাই দ্য পিপল হু ডু দিস থিংস।
মানে ওই অ্যাপারেটাস গুলো, স্টেট অ্যাপারেটাস,
স্টেট
রিপ্রেসিভ
অ্যাপারেটাস,
স্টেট।
হ্যাঁ, আর এটা সাবজেক্টিভ নয়, মানে সাবজেক্টিভ হলো তো একজন ব্যক্তি বিশেষের ইয়ের থেকে হবে। এইটা যদিও শুরু হয়তো একজন ব্যক্তি বিশেষের থেকে শুরু হয়েছিল, কিন্তু এটাকে মানে আরএসএ আইএসএ এরা অ্যাডপ্ট করে নিয়েছে এবং এটাকে পারপিচুয়েট করছে খালি।
আর একটা কোয়েশ্চেন আছে ছোট, সেটা হচ্ছে গিয়ে মেটেরিয়ালিস্ট এস্থেটিক অফ আলথুজার, এটা কি মেনলি বলতে চেয়েছে?
অ্যাম আই ডুইং অলথুজার উইথ ইউ? নো।
নো নো নো, এটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি টপিকটা মানে বুঝতে পারছিলাম না এটা কি করতে হবে।
ওকে, কি কি বললে আবার বলো।
মেটেরিয়ালিস্ট এস্থেটিক অফ আলথুজার।
Materialistic aesthetics. I can't say something in general. Uh, let me think about it, let me read up a bit about this, because আমি কিছু একটা বলবো সেটার অন্য কিছু একটা মানে হবে, সেটা নিয়ে তো করলে হবে না। let me read up a little about this. পার্সোনালি আমাকে মেসেজ করে দাও হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে, তাহলে আমি
ওকে
করব।
ওকে ওকে।
Okay, any other questions related to hairy ape or anything in general? Because after this we will meet only after your exam is over.
স্যার কোয়েশ্চেন তো নেই, কিন্তু যদি একটু মেটেরিয়াল দিয়ে দাও তাহলে একটু ভালো হয়।
মেটেরিয়াল বলতে যে দুটো জিনিস তোমাদেরকে দিয়েছি, দুটো আনসারের মতন কিছু পয়েন্টসের মতন দিয়েছি, ইউ ক্যান ডেভেলপ দ্য আনসার ফ্রম দেয়ার, ওইখান থেকে হয়ে যাবে।
আচ্ছা
তোমাদের এক্সাম 27 তারিখ থেকে তো?
হ্যাঁ
ঠিক আছে, তার আগে যদি তোমরা কিছু লিখে আমাকে দেখাতে চাও দেখাতে পারো, মানে আই এম নট প্রমিসিং যে আমি তোমাদের তক্ষুনি উত্তর দিয়ে দিতে পারবো বা কিছু করে দিতে পারবো, বাট ইউ ক্যান ট্রাই। অ্যান্ড যদি দেখাতে হয় তাহলে ছবি তুলে পাঠাবে না, টাইপ করে পাঠাবে, কারণ ছবিটাতে আমি কারেক্ট করতে পারবো না, কিছুই করতে পারবো না।
ওকে স্যার।
এনিথিং
Okay,
এলস?
sir.
হ্যাঁ বলো।
না,
কি কি বলছো?
বললাম না স্যার, ওকে বললাম তার আগে।
ওকে না, আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, ফাইন। Any other questions? Anything else? Of course, ইয়েতে তো থাকবো, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে থাকবো, বাট এখানে যদি কিছু